Bitcoin und Co. Der Podcast über Kryptowährungen, Blockchain-Anwendungen und das digitale Leben. Mit Buchautorin und Bitcoin-Expertin Anita Posch.
Hello and welcome to another terrific Bitcoin and Co podcast. I'm very delighted and honored to be able to present this talk today. It's a conversation I had with Andreas M. Antonopoulos. Andreas is a best-selling author, speaker, educator, and one of the world's foremost Bitcoin and open blockchain experts. Since 2012, he's commenting, educating, and advising people, businesses, and governments about Bitcoin and open blockchains. He is known for delivering electric talks that combine economics, psychology, technology, game theory, with current events, personal anecdotes, and historical facts. Andreas has been interviewed on the BBC, Bloomberg Business, CNN, The Economist, Forbes, and now I'm lucky that he's my guest on the Bitcoin and Co podcast. As you will see, Andreas M. Antonopoulos is one of the rare Bitcoin and open blockchain experts who approaches the subject from an educational, political, cultural, and human perspective, not only discussing the technology in investment terms. In the next 30 minutes, we discuss Bitcoin in the context of human rights, blockchain projects and their impact on society and the economy, how a multi-currency world could look like, what his first purchase with Bitcoin was, which books he recommends, and, being self-employed since young age, he shares his views and learnings about being an entrepreneur.
Dieser Podcast wird freundlicherweise unterstützt von Coinfinity, einem österreichischen Bitcoin-Broker und Kompetenzzentrum für Blockchain-Lösungen. Kaufen Sie Bitcoin, Ethereum, Litecoin und Dash über die Website von Coinfinity oder auch in jeder österreichischen Trafik über das Gutscheinprodukt Bitcoin Bon. Coinfinity bietet auch die sogenannte Bitcoin-Wertschrift an, physische Bitcoins, die eine langfristige und sichere Aufbewahrung ermöglichen. Weiters berät Coinfinity Unternehmen bei der Nutzung von Kryptowährungen und der technischen Abwicklung von ICOs. Kundenberatung wird bei Coinfinity großgeschrieben. Rufen Sie einfach an, kommen Sie im Office in Graz vorbei oder besuchen Sie Coinfinity unter www.coinfinity.co.
Hello, Andreas Antonopoulos. Thank you very much for taking your time to have a chat with me and the listeners of the Bitcoin and Co podcast. It's a great honor and a pleasure to talk with you.
Oh, thank you so much, Anita. It's so fun to be on the show.
In your Twitter bio, you describe yourself with the words Bitcoin, open blockchains, security, entrepreneur, coder, atheist, pacifist, and pilot.
Yeah, I do.
Yeah, I can relate to that very much, only I wouldn't say that I'm a coder and I'm definitely not a pilot. And you are also an outspoken advocate for human rights, for gender equality, and a supporter of LGBTE rights. And I just...
yes, that's true.
Yeah, and I just wanted to thank you for that in the beginning, because I think it's so important to have strong people and voices that empower others, especially in the very male-dominated crypto industry.
Oh, thank you.
And thanks for that, yeah. And that brings us right to the topic of our talk, which is Bitcoin and the blockchain technology. When I think about things like privacy issues and the right to have some sort of anonymity online and in our private lives, could we say that Bitcoin and blockchains could be an empowering layer or basis for human rights?
If we get it right, yes. If we develop it correctly, yes. I think if Bitcoin and open blockchains remain open and decentralized, and if we strengthen the privacy guarantees, because they're not so strong in Bitcoin at the moment, but I think they're getting stronger, then yes, the ability to make payments without surveillance in an unfettered way, across borders, internationally, without interference, I think is massively important for self-determination. and free expression. In the end, money is one of the ways in which we express our political opinions. We fund the causes we care about. We associate with others in clubs and things like that. And if you have complete surveillance of money, as is the case with credit cards and banking institutions today, then that kind of makes a mockery of the principles of self-determination and freedom of expression that our governments claim to espouse.
I read in an interview you did in Austria in the last weeks that you were talking about the dangers of fascism that we see again, sadly, worldwide.
Absolutely.
And I also think that's really a problem here, especially with our history here in Austria and in Germany. What do you think? Bitcoin is pseudonymous. Pseudonymous, yeah. So, meaning that it's not, you can follow all transactions, but you do not know who's behind the transaction. When do you think that new developments in Bitcoin will arise that will bring real anonymity?
I think in the next couple of years, we're going to be seeing strong anonymity protections and strong privacy protections using a combination of advanced technologies that are being developed today, which include things like Schnorr signatures, masked, graftroot and taproot, confidential transactions, and various forms of coin join technology. All of these are mechanisms for hiding the source and destination address, or making that private, making the value of the transaction private, and disassociating or making it difficult to associate transactions to specific individuals or specific wallets, or to track them in clusters and do statistical analysis. And they provide quite strong guarantees. But at the same time, all of these technologies, you can still independently and authoritatively verify the blockchain's validity. Even though you don't know the amounts, the senders, or the destination, you can calculate that all of the numbers add up without knowing what the numbers are. It's one of these crazy little tricks in cryptography. And that gives you something that is both anonymous, but also very decentralized and peer-to-peer. So I think that's likely to happen in the next 2 to 3 years.
And don't you think that governments will then try to regulate it more, or say it's illegal because it's anonymized?
They may try. They may try to regulate. They may try to make it illegal. They may try. They may try many things. But at the same time, keep in mind that we're talking about a system that already has sufficient liquidity to continue to operate, and that Bitcoin isn't the only one. There are now thousands of cryptocurrencies, and many of them have these strong anonymity protections already in them. So there are a number of other cryptocurrencies where the primary emphasis has been on privacy. They're not as liquid, they're not as widespread, they're not as easy to use, but they are much stronger in terms of privacy. The bottom line is this: private money has arrived, and governments can pretend it hasn't. So they can pretend they want to stop it. They can pretend they want to go back to this dream they created in the 1970s of turning the money system into an extension of law enforcement and creating a totalitarian surveillance system of money, which started with the Bank Secrecy Act and various other regulations and continued through to the legacy of the NSA and the various other intelligence agencies, using money as a mechanism for surveillance. But we had private money for thousands of years, private peer-to-peer, non-traceable money in the form of cash. And society didn't fall apart. Horrible things didn't happen because of cash. They happened for other reasons, because human nature has problems, but it wasn't that. So we can go back to a time where we have private money again, and the world won't fall apart. In fact, many parts of the world will be more free as a result of that.
Can you maybe just explain in some sentences what Bitcoin is, in a way that my grandparents, for instance, would understand?
So Bitcoin is money on the internet, and it is a purely digital form of money that does not have any physical equivalent. But the important thing about Bitcoin is not that it's digital money, because the euro is also mostly digital money. It's stored on computers. It's not the paper and coins that you hold in your hand. That's only 8% approximately of the money in circulation. The rest of it is all digital. What's special about Bitcoin is that it is money that is transacted directly between individuals, entirely like cash, and is not held by someone else, such as a bank, payment provider, PayPal, etc. Instead, you hold it, you transmit it directly to the person you want to pay. No one can interfere with that transaction. No one can take away, seize, freeze, or charge you for holding your own money. And so it's a form of money where it's as simple as sending an email or accessing a website on the internet, and you have exactly the same freedoms. When you access a website somewhere on the internet, your computer connects directly to that website, and you can access any website you want, at least in free countries, and even in non-free countries with the right tools you can. And so Bitcoin is that for money.
When I tell people about the blocks in the blockchain and how they get to be connected together, and there's this 10-minute time span between each block is added to the chain, I most always get the question, what happens in between? How secure is a transaction that I do now, and it's maybe in 10 or 20 minutes in the next block? What is in the meantime?
In the meantime, it's not so secure, unless you use some additional technology to make it secure, such as a multi-signature technology, some form of escrow or second layer like Lightning Network. But in the meantime, with Bitcoin and other similar blockchains, you have to wait for sufficient time to pass for the entire worldwide network to agree and for your transaction effectively to be settled. Now, what most people don't realize is that in the banking system, that takes 3 to 5 days. With credit cards, it can take up to 30 days. So when you pay a merchant with a credit card, they don't have that money. They won't actually get it cleared and settled into the account and be able to spend it for up to 30 days after you make that transaction. And in the meantime, the bank can take it back at any time. And so, settlement in 3 to 5 days or 20 days or 30 days versus settlement in 30 minutes is really what we're comparing.
Yeah, which is also a very good point for businesses, no? who are working in logistics or something like that.
Yes, and you take the appropriate risk for a €5 cup of coffee transaction. If it's not settled and there's a possibility of a chargeback, that's okay. Merchants already take that risk. That's why you don't have to sign or sometimes even enter a PIN for a transaction below €20 or €25. And the merchant takes the risk that if you were to challenge that transaction, charge it back or reverse it, they just take the loss, because very few people are going to do that, and speeding up the line in the store more than pays for that small incidence of fraud. The same thing applies to any other transaction. So if you're going to send, thousands and thousands of euros in order to buy a car or buy a house or something like that, sure, you'll wait a day, or you'll wait an hour or two before you hand the other person the keys to the car. But, at the same time, just to give you an example, I sold my car at 10 p.m. on a Saturday to someone who paid me from another state, and the banks were closed. And after 3 confirmations, I gave them the keys to the car because I was confident at that point, after 30 minutes, that the Bitcoin had settled enough for me to hand over the keys and complete a transaction that was worth more than 10,000 euros. And so, I couldn't do that transaction. With cash, it would be very risky for me to get robbed or given forged cash. With a bank, I couldn't do it at that time of the day, and it would still be a very complicated issue. So I was able to do that with Bitcoin very easily and efficiently. So you wait the time you think in order to reduce the risk of that specific transaction, depending on how big the transaction is.
And the good thing about it is also that the transaction costs do not relate to the amount, but to the data that is sent. True?
Yes. True. In fact, just 2 days ago, we saw the new record being broken. A transaction of 255 million euros was sent. The transaction fee for that was 20 cents.
Wow.
That is simply impossible to do with the traditional banking system. Recently, I was paid for a conference, and PayPal charged me $75 to receive $2,000. So, it's there's no comparison.
I think that's also the great thing about it, because using it then for the work of artists and creative people or journalists, like those projects like Ucho Music, for instance, or the Brave
Yes.
browser. I think these are great things. And would you also say that these are blockchain projects that really make sense because they are open and they empower the single creator?
I absolutely agree. I think we're not quite there yet because micropayments are not possible with blockchains today, or they're difficult to do, and the fees can be if you pay for the amount of data you send and it's 20 cents. The problem of that is, of course, it's fine if you're just sending 255 million euros, but if you wanted to send 10 euro cents, you'd still pay 20 cents.
That's true.
For that. So then it would seem very expensive. For that, we have second layer technologies like Lightning Network, Raiden, various other technologies that are being developed to facilitate micropayments, very, very fast, very, very small payments. Now that can really revolutionize content and really help independent creators not have to use an intermediary. The truth is that today, a lot of the reason we use intermediaries is because we need to aggregate payments or aggregate advertising so we can pay for the distribution of the data. And so you're either paying with micro violations of your privacy with targeted advertising and your personal data being recorded, or you pay a subscription and it has to be aggregated on a massive scale to make sense, like Spotify or Amazon or all of those various services. So the ability to break that down and be able to make a direct micropayment of a few pennies, a few cents to an individual content creator and let them aggregate all of those at very low cost, that frees up artists from the intermediary. And I think that's, of course, one of the great advantages of this technology is that it removes intermediaries.
But this would work at the moment just with Ethereum. Do you know anything about Rootstock? I heard that it will be also a layer on which the smart contracts can be routed or programmed.
Yes, both Ethereum and Rootstock use a virtual machine to provide smart contracts. So essentially a programmable blockchain where you can write little programs that operate on the blockchain. These platforms are great for programmable blockchains, but they don't scale as efficiently. So they scale less than Bitcoin even. So doing micropayments with those, you'd have to consider doing that on a different layer because at times they can get very, very congested and the fees can get very high in those platforms too.
Okay, so you were talking about your car selling with Bitcoin. When did you use Bitcoin for a transaction the first time? Can you remember that?
Yes, the first time I used Bitcoin for a transaction was probably in very late 2012, maybe. Bitcoin was under $30 at the time. Its value was less than $30. And I bought a bag of coffee beans from a seller in Arizona, and I believe I paid 1.5 Bitcoin. So in today's prices, well over 5,000 euros for a bag of coffee. But that's how you make the commercial system work, is by making these trades, because I also got paid for my services what would now be ridiculous amounts.
So back in those days, if we can say so, like in 2012, how hard was it to use Bitcoin? I mean, now we have apps like Copay, Samurai Wallet, etc.
Oh, it was very hard. There were no mobile wallets at the time, or maybe the first one had just come out for Android, which was the Bitcoin wallet by Andreas M, who I believe is
German?
Austrian.
No, isn't he? I
He's
know, don't
German,
know. Okay, I don't know. Austrian
perhaps.
or German, I don't know.
Yes. So Andreas had written the first Bitcoin wallet at the time. But other than that, there were no exchanges, or there was one exchange really, which was Mt. Gox. And the only way you could send money to that was through a complicated series of wire transfers with intermediaries, or various. There were no really easy to use exchanges. There were no easy to use ATMs. There were very few merchants who accepted it. And it was a very complicated process. So yeah, but that's how technology goes. It starts very difficult, and only the absolutely committed early adopters, mostly geeks, are willing to try it, and then it becomes easier and easier for everybody else.
I also heard you say that you believe in a multi-currency world, that there might be hundreds or thousands of different currencies existing worldwide. I'm in favor of regional currencies. I mean, I think they can support local communities. How do you think will or can those be connected to Bitcoin, and how can a system like that work?
Well, I think we're gradually moving into an environment where we will have tools, maybe second layer tools, that allow us to transfer or exchange any currency, any one of these cryptocurrencies, into any of the other cryptocurrencies in a few seconds, for almost no fee at all and with no intermediaries, directly peer-to-peer. What that means then is that becomes a programmable function of your wallet, which means that your wallet chooses which currency to use every second. It can choose as you walk up to a merchant, it can use Wi-Fi, Bluetooth, NFC, or something else to communicate with their point of sale and ask them, which currencies do you support? Get a list of 1,500 currencies, see if it has any of those, or if it prefers one at this moment in time based on current pricing, exchange something into that currency, pay the merchant, and continue. And so that could be an automatic negotiation, just like your phone decides which Wi-Fi to connect to, or when you make a telephone call, how to route that telephone call across multiple international carriers based on the best price available for international calls. Or how internet packets are routed. So money becomes fully routable. And then which currency you hold doesn't really make any sense. It doesn't mean anything any more than which ISP you have. We didn't have to discuss which ISP we're going to use to have this conversation. And you shouldn't need to discuss which kind of money you have in order to do a transaction. It will just be exchanged automatically by your device.
Yeah, we had to say, is it Skype or Google Hangouts?
Yeah, those protocols are still not open. There was a time when video conferencing protocols were much more open, and you didn't need to do that. But unfortunately, they've regressed.
Oh, okay, yeah. That's also the hope for open blockchains, that they open up these centralized institutions again and give us the right to decide what we are wanting to do with our data by ourselves.
Absolutely.
Yeah, I think that's the one of the powerful facts and things with Bitcoin and blockchains.
For sure.
Yeah, I know you read a lot. Can you maybe recommend one or two books for people who are interested in Bitcoin, and or maybe in something more common, like how our lives will be changed by digital technologies in the future, or something like that?
So many books. I can't even consider which one to recommend right now. I recently read The Truth Machine by Michael Casey and Paul Vigna.
Yeah, exactly.
There's a couple of other interesting books that have come out. I think the other one that was very interesting is Debt, 500-Year History.
Paul Graeber?
Or 5,000-year history?
5,000, David. I have it on my desk at the moment.
Yeah,
Okay.
5,000-year history. Yeah. So that's definitely a very interesting book to understand kind of modern economics, but also traditional economics. I'm not sure I can recommend any other books.
I mean, I recommend to all of the listeners your books, of course, like The Internet of Money or Mastering Bitcoin for the more technical interested people. They are a great starting point, I think. And
Well, thank
also,
you.
and also all of your videos. I mean, they are simply great. And also the Q&As you do are very helpful.
Oh, thank you so much. I appreciate that.
Now we're coming to an end. You're also a successful entrepreneur. You started as a solo entrepreneur, I think. What was your most important learning in your journey as an entrepreneur from like 10 years ago or 20 years ago? I don't know when you started as a businessman, but is there anything you can give an advice to people who want to start a business?
Yeah, I started when I was 15 years old. So that's 30 years of working for myself. In that time, I've only worked for somebody else for about a year and a half, two different bosses. I didn't like it. I like to control control my own destiny with all of the risk that has. And I started a number of businesses. Some of them were somewhat successful. Many of them failed for various reasons. And with every failure, I learned some new lessons, right? So being an entrepreneur isn't about succeeding. It's about continuing to try through successive failures. And if you have a failure, minimizing the impact, figuring it out quickly enough to move on to the next thing, and continuing to try. And eventually you have some successes, and in the meantime, you have a lot of freedom with your choices. I've learned a lot of lessons from each one of the failures. Problems with trusting partners who could not be trusted, who stole from me, or building relationships, making decisions, managing my time, working with other people, having employees, managing other people, helping people advance in their own interests and careers so that they can be very productive when they work with me. Being careful about how and when to make decisions, saying no a lot more often than saying yes. All of these things are things you learn gradually by making mistakes. And each mistake builds upon the previous, so you can learn and hopefully not make the same mistake at least more than twice, if possible. But I've enjoyed it because it gives me the freedom to work from wherever I want, to make my work valuable and rewarding for me psychologically and emotionally, no matter where I am. And even if it's not very profitable, it's always fun to do, and I make sure of that. And so in the end, it's given me lifestyle. It doesn't necessarily, it's not about, some people want to be rich, but I've found it more valuable in my life to have freedom and the ability to travel and experience the world and have flexibility in my time and my schedule. And you can only do that if you work for yourself.
Thank you. That was a very, very great finish now, or final statement. I think being an entrepreneur is a real adventure in life, and it also keeps me going. It's just the thing. I want to do this. I want my freedom. I want to be independent, and it's a real up and down. You're like a mentor, maybe, or something.
Oh, thank you.
Yeah, thank you. And my last question is, how can my listeners follow you and support your work?
So you can find all of my work. First of all, my books and my videos are all available under open licenses, mostly Creative Commons licenses, which means that you can share them, read them, copy them, and modify them for your own purposes for free. I very much believe in an open culture where we all collaborate to produce great works for everybody. And in making information free. You can also, of course, buy my books if you so choose, especially if you like paper or the convenience of a Kindle reader or some other ebook reader. My work is mostly supported nowadays through Patreon, which is a platform for creators where people can contribute, $5 a month or €3 a month or whatever. and give me the freedom to continue to pursue my work and then enjoy it with everybody else, available for free. My patrons also get access to some special goodies, behind the scenes, early access to videos, as well as the ability to participate in live Q&A sessions and ask questions. But regardless, all of the information that I produce, all my videos, all my books, all my work, becomes available to the public for free within a few weeks of it being available to my patrons.
Great. And I can confirm the thing with the patrons.
Yes, thank you for your support.
No, there is, of course, sure. So, yes, thanks a lot for your time, for this great talk. It was a lot of fun. And I wish you all the best for the coming months and years. And yes, bye. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Anita. It's been a pleasure.
Thank you. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.
Hat es Ihnen gefallen? Dann teilen Sie bitte den Podcast auf Facebook, Twitter oder LinkedIn. Wenn Sie Fragen zu diesem Podcast haben, hinterlassen Sie einen Kommentar auf der Podcast-Webseite unter anitaposch.com/podcast. Wollen Sie mehr über Bitcoin und Blockchains wissen, dann lesen Sie mein Buch oder besuchen Sie eines meiner Online-Seminare, bei denen ich Ihre Fragen auch direkt beantworte. Infos dazu finden Sie auf meiner Webseite unter anitaposch.com/akademie.
Das war die heutige Ausgabe von Bitcoin & Co. Idee und Inhalte von Anita Posch, Schnitt von Katrin Eidenhammer.